So, good morning, and very happy to be here, this beautiful place, and I will try to be short. Before I will answer to the question that Michael said, what I get yesterday and what is next, that maybe could be also the synthesis of what I'm going to say. I learned that the expression to make a plan here means not to have a plan. It means what we do next. And I think that what we do next means also what you say, how we move from planning to action. And I really think that this is very important, because if we don't act, we do not learn. And if we don't learn, we don't know where to go. So all the old idea of starting with big research that after a while should bring us to do something are wrong. Probably has always been wrong, but they are particularly wrong when things are moving so fast and when the situation is so complex. So the only thing to have a plan is to make a plan. That means to act. But, and this is what next, when we act, we need a vision. And the vision is not the vision of the plan, so it's not the foreseen of what for sure will happen. The vision is the driver of our action, and hopefully the catalyzer of many people to act in a similar way. So act, make a plan, and build a vision. So design policy. And design has been defined there. I'd like to present something that some of you have already seen that comes from the fact that I've been here, and I had the possibility to look to what is design practically. And I will show this to say, look, maybe the reality of design is much more advanced than many of our discussions. So we have World Design Capital. If you browse, you find, and also here in the exhibition, 460 projects. I have had the possibility to look, and I've been helped by Raleigh, that is somewhere there, to have an overview, not all of them, but of them, those that has been selected for the Open Design Festival. And what happened is that if we make a kind of scheme with a product on one side and system, intended for system everything, from service, organizations, solutions on the other side, and a normal design process and a co-design process mean that they declare to have worked in a very complicated, complex group of people, and we make a map, what we observe is that this is a qualitative expression, that the majority of the projects are in the quadrant number 3. So they are mainly systems, and they are mainly co-design. So in my view, this is a very clear and simple expression of something that is happening. In the World Design Capital, that is a World Design Capital is not the organization for co-design, for very special design. It's a very normal design. Having launched the idea of presenting projects, the majority of the projects are there. So in my view, this is a very strong signal of change. Something is already happening, and the reality of what does it mean design is much more diverse, and I will say advanced, than many of our discussions. So if the design of the 20th century or the last century was mainly in the first quadrant, so it was mainly products designed by a group of designers, of expert designers, the design of the 21st century is already, and is going to be more and more, something that is in that quadrant, in which the objects of design are mainly systems, and who is involved in the design process are a lot of different people, in between them expert designers. So we as expert designers have to be capable to recognize what does it mean to design and to be expert designer in the world in which everything can be designed and everybody in some way is involved in process of co-design. So if we try to make a little bit of generalization from this, is first that in some way, if we take seriously the fact that we are in a networked society, in the network society, the normal thing is co-design. And what is very difficult is to design alone. Because to design alone, you have to close all the windows. Where if you are open in the society, you are naturally open to the other, and naturally you co-design. Of course, I'm not talking co-design as a kind of process. A kind of methodology that you can do around the table discussing. Co-design is the interaction in between different people that have some design act. And they all together, linked in the network, in some way, generate some results. The second point is in the world in which, if it is like this, everybody could be involved in design, what is the expert design role? So I think that the majority of you are designers that mean expert design, given that also the others in some way are designers. So we are the designer looking to the scheme that has been shown by Michael before, that are conscious and have some expertise in working in this way, participating to a design process. So what is our role? It's not so much to arrive to the end product, but to be helper, to enable, to help the other to be better designers. So we become the ones that help the system to design better, considering that also the other one are in a way on the other participating to the design process. If this is true, what we have to do is not so much the final product, not because I don't want to be misunderstood. At the end, we have to have something concrete, some act, something that changes the reality. But the change in the reality is not our designer change, because it's a result of a group of people that did it. So what we have to do is to bring in the process some knowledge. And the knowledge is done by specific tools, is done by a specific culture. That means, in my view, some specific point of view. So this is the two main leverage that we as expert designers have to have if we participate to a group with others that maybe are not everybody known, so they are not around the table, they are maybe spread in the society. We have to bring knowledge. And we have to see how the designers are capable to move to present their own work as, this is my work, I designed this, toward, this is what I'm capable to do, this is the knowledge that I bring to the process. Now let's move to policy. In general, this is such a big discussion that I can really only say the title, but I hope that you will understand what I'm referring to. Everybody says that we are in the complexity, and never society appears so complex as now. And everybody, I hope, knows that we are in transition, because in any case, we will have to go toward a sustainable society, if we like it or not. For the good or for the bad, we have to move toward another society. So complexity and transition are the two key words that are here to remain for me, for the younger one, and for the son of the younger one, because it's an historical process. And so we will be in this kind of turbulence for a long period. So this will become the normal way of acting for me and for the youngest one and for the son of the younger ones, to be capable to navigate in complexity and in turbulence. So if this is true, complexity cannot be managed by the center. This is what the policymaker has to understand. It's impossible to manage complexity from the center. The only way to manage complexity is to use the opportunity of the distributed system and to distribute complexity. And distribute complexity means to bring the problems where people know the problems and they can manage the local complexity. So nobody has the view of the general complexity. It's theoretically impossible. What has to be done is to bring the issue to who are nearer to the specific problems, and they have more possibility to manage that complexity. I call it the distribution of the complexity in the nodes of the net. And the second one is if for generation we will be in a transition, experimentation is the normality. For the traditional designer, for instance, now I'm not talking specifically of design, but let's say the designer, there could be the professional that have a knowledge and did is professional work. Which work today is professional? Every time you are to face something that is new. Every time, if you are really a good designer, you have to face something that was not foreseen in your previous experience. And therefore, every design is an experiment. Of course, to do experiment is not so easy, and to make experiment is risky if we do not recognize that it's mandatory to make experiment. So, for the state, for the public, for the institution, in the complexity, first, as I said before, they have to be capable to distribute complexity and to have the different nodes can take decisions. And if we are in experimentation phase, we have to, and this is very important, and I will come back, it will be toward the end, it's to create spaces particularly dedicated to experimentation. And this is, I anticipate, because maybe at the end I had to cut, is one of the indications of the policy. Policy today, for me, means mainly to create spaces for experimentation. Spaces for experimentation means places where you are allowed to fail, strange enough. Because experiment means to learn from the experience. If we want to act, even if you don't have the plan, it means that you make something that is experimental. You can make mistake, but the mistake has to be clear. And if they are clear, the other one can learn from the mistake. Well, what happened today, especially in the institutions, is that if they fail, they are not supposed to fail. So they put the failure under the carpet. So nobody really recognizes, nobody really can learn from the failure. So when we say space for experiments, means places in which it's normal that if you dare to do something, you can make some failure. And afterward, as it happened in science, you have to learn from experience. Of course, it's not so simple. Of course, there is a kind of error friendliness in what you dare to do. So you have not to dare to do something that could be a catastrophe. And this is a second discussion. But it's very important to have the idea that we need to create space for experimentation. So I have already anticipated something on the design policy. I said if creating spaces for experimentation is good for all the discussion that we can have in public innovation and social innovation, it's particularly good for design policy. In my view, I will not criticize anybody, but the view that the policy, it's a government that has some ideas, and the policy is the way to implement the idea to the local, it's wrong. Maybe I've always been wrong, but it's particularly wrong into the complexity and transition. The policy should be, first of all, to create conditions to liberate the energy and to create the possibility for this energy to catalyze and to arrive to ideas. And afterward, to be clever enough to recognize the good ideas and to support the good ideas. So the policy is not only, for sure, not bottom-up, no, top-down, not only bottom-up, because if you have the bottom-up but nobody recognizes the good ideas and help the good ideas to consolidate, probably they will die. So it's a mixture of bottom-up and some kind of help, filter, support from the top. So this is the policy, in my view, for everything, but in particular for design. The good news, these are a funny representation done of a research that my colleague in Parsons did, is this idea of the spaces for experimentation is booming. So there are hundreds maybe not yet, but many places with different names. They could have the name of Space for Experimentation, Experimentation Lab, some kind of living lab, public innovation labs. So you can look at them, and you can find that they're growing. In some way, for me, what I present is my idea, but I have the impression that many different people with different background, when they really think what we can do to make something happen, to act, as we said before, they think that it's needed a special space, a little bit protected, not so much detached by the institutions, because otherwise the institutions say, yes, this is your thing, it's not interesting for me. Not too much inside the institution, because the institution digests everything. If you do everything in the institution, you become institutionalized immediately, so you cannot experiment. So these spaces are a little bit inside, outside, and generate the condition to give people the possibility to invent something new. The second one is to promote and support a new economical model. Yesterday, has been said by many people, oh, design is to help the international competition. This is one of the stories about design. But the international competition, if we stop here, we are in the dead-end road, because simply the economy of the competition in this way, we know, has no future. You cannot promise well-being through competition to 7 billion people, because in the competition, if I gain, you lose. And so we are not talking about the well-being. Our mandate as designers is to promote ideas that could be the well-being for everybody. So if, as stated in the European document, I hope not to hurt sensibilities, design for growth and prosperity is an oxymoron. Because you can have the prosperity for those that grow. But in the planet, not everybody can grow. And the more that we are in the number, the less are the ones that enjoy of this growth. So it's not the direction in which we have to go. Luckily, that economy of the limit, the economy of the poverty, the economy of scarcity, that is a normal economy. We have learned that the economy is an economy of scarcity. It's not true. Economy is much more complex. And of course, also this one could be a very long discussion, but if we look around, already now, we discover some new way of doing things that are based on economies, plural, that are not only the economy of competition, and that blend. Yesterday, Mugendi was saying, okay, competition, but there is also collaboration. And there are some cultures, as in Africa, in which collaboration is particularly strong, still now. And afterward, yes, the emerging sharing economy. And afterward, there are the hundreds of people that do something in the gift economy. And afterward, there are the economics. So we have not anymore only one economy. It's not that we have to move from that economy to another one. But we have to move from that economy, the economy of competition and scarcity, toward an ecology of economies that permit to blend different ways of doing it. I've listed here a number of service ideas that emerged by social innovation. And social innovation is not only interesting because it solves some practical problems, but also because it's generating new economical models. They are very small, very little, but they have very complex models. If you analyze community-supported agriculture, carpooling, co-sharing, and whatever of this long list, you will see that there is a mixture of different kinds of economy that permit us to talk about a different perspective, a different blend in between competition and collaboration. And not by chance, it's the way in which the ecosystem works. So we are moving toward an ecosystemic idea of the economy. My one is a story at the moment, but it's not a totally abstract, because this example shows that it's possible, it's real, at least the prototype are here already now. The third will be to promote new idea of well-being, and I will be very quick because I have to really close. We need a new narrative, I said before. And what I just say now introduce to the possibility of the new narrative. The 20th century, the well-being was availability of product or service, a kind of democracy of consumption, but the democracy of consumption, when it's dreamt by a few 100 million people, it's okay. When it's dreamt by 7 billion people, tomorrow 9 million people, it's a nightmare. So we have to dream a dream, an idea of well-being, that could be dreamt by 7 billion people today and 11 billion people or 9 billion people in 20 years. So this is our challenge. What we can imagine that is so abundant that everybody in the world can dream as a direction. And we can really promise, if we go in this direction, we can improve the quality of our life. So we need these new stories that can be dreamt by so many people, and they have to be based on something that is abundant. What is abundant? We have something that is abundant, and the synthesis is named the relational goods. A good neighborhoods, the capability of people to coexist, the capability to talk together, the capability of having an outside space in which you can sit on, safely play in the night, all these are relational goods. And the relational goods are interesting because they cannot be produced and consumed by one person, and they have no limits. If my neighborhood is safer, and there is another neighborhood that is safer too, I don't lose anything. It's better for everybody. So a new kind of economy that you can build on this idea. And there is a lot of qualities that are really, at the end of the day, what everybody recognizes as the quality of the life that should be promoted. And there is a new narrative that has to be said about what we search. So when we talk about well-being, what is the well-being? And in my view, the well-being is something related to a richness. Because we have to talk about richness, talking about sustainability, the mainstream discussion has been we have to reduce, we have to be poor because we are so many, because there is a disaster. But this is not the basis on which you can build a new society, a new civilization. The new worldwide civilization has to be built on something that is a richness. And the richness is the richness of relational goods, because there are no limits to the relational goods. It's possible, this is a good question, of course. It's an hypothesis, but we are designing, we have to bet on the possibility. So the first possibility is that the network and society, in some way, eliminating the weight of the hierarchical system, generate conditions for many people to open up to new possibilities. And this opening up could also bring to terrible solutions. So I'm not saying that this is by definition something that brings us in the good direction, but there are new possibilities that did not exist before. And secondly, as I said, the social innovation is showing us this kind of social economy that permit new way of interacting with these people. All this, as I've not mentioned Africa until now, and I am here to learn and not to teach anything to the Africans. But I think that there is some possibility to have what I call a double leap, because it's possible to leap from pre-modernity toward this kind of vision that I presented, leaping through the traditional modernity, but also the so-called information and knowledge society, because the information and knowledge society is unsustainable too. It's enough to go to see what happened in California, what happened in the UK, that are, by every point of view, information and knowledge-based economy, and they are less sustainable environmentally and socially than many other places. So we can and must leap to a new economy, a design that do what I said before in general. And just to finish, I think, and I leave this to the discussion, that for some reason in Africa it's easier to make the double link the double leap than the one leap. So it's easier to move toward this kind of social economy and well-being based on these relational goods than try desperately to go to the unsustainable service and knowledge traditional mainstream idea of society. I killed by myself. Thank you.
It's my turn. Where's my slide? Okay, good morning. It's not that easy to talk after Ezio. I hope that I can keep his speed. So my topic is about designing the design policy of China, leapfrog for a new economy. At least we have something in common. Like we talk about leapfrog, we talk about economy. Everybody knows that now China just replaced US as the biggest economy in the world. I don't know if it's a good news or it's a bad news. But the bad news, the problem of being number one, is you have to think how to sustain. If you look at where this credits of China's economy comes from, so a global competitive index, and they divide three kinds of economy. The first is factor-driven, the second is efficiency-driven, the third is innovation-driven. And China's economy is a typical efficiency-driven economy. But the problem is, we all know that these laws of thermodynamics and the resource and the energy inside of a closed system is limited. If we talk about we are an efficiency-driven economy, which means a high efficiency, so which means that the consumption of today's resource energy in this country is really very fast, and it's very difficult to sustain. So, a transformation is needed. And luckily, and the design was considered as a key. And yesterday, when I was here, I talked to all of my Italian colleagues. I said that, you know, that your premier and my premier, actually, they were in Italy, in Milano. And they connected with Tongji University, my university, with a video camera. And we exactly copied exactly the same exhibition in Milano. And they're talking about design. And this premier, and he talks about design in many national level strategic conference. And so design is so important for country now. But how to use the key better? Today we talk about design policy. Actually, there's many different, things actually decide how to use this key better. But I think that anyway, government is one of the most important stakeholders, at least in China, at least now. What is design policy? And I say design policy is guiding the development of design and the application of design towards a vision. This is my definition. But in China, what is China's design policy? At least there are two key issues. The first is where to go. And now we talk about the sustainability, now becomes a common awareness. At least on the national level, at the national level, people think that China's economy has to be sustainable. So this is about the strategy. It's a strategic law. And the second, in a technical, it means transformation. First, the principle. The second is how to take action and the process. So you look at China's sustainable development, there are three key topics. The first is economic growth. It's very dangerous for China if the economic growth stopped. And the second is environmental impact. It has to going down. And the third is social wellness. And this is something, a big area for design. Before, design can contribute a little bit in that area, but now it's things totally different because design is also changing. China is a very typical top-down country. At least the people believe that. But later, if I have time, I can tell you actually it's not true. But anyway, let's talk about this top-down scenario. China has made lots of national level strategies. And for instance, this is a sustainable development outline, which is made in 2007. So this declared there's a several goal for the country we have to achieve. In 2020, so the well-off society initially built, and in 2030, zero growth rate of population. And in 2040, zero growth rate of consumption of energy and natural resources. And in 2050, zero growth rate of environmental degradation. So all of these things are national strategy. If you look at all of these things, the first thing, I think that the first one almost achieved, and the second one, already achieved. So this is the interesting of China. They set up a goal, and then they use all of the capacity of the government to secure that. Now, basically, one baby policy has been criticized a lot in the past 10 years. But now, basically, the one baby policy in China is cancelled because they already achieved the goal. Then we don't need this kind of a policy. So China actually we are thinking, we are experiencing a kind of a paradigm shift without landing. Before, I talk a lot about the soft landing and the hard landing, and we want to use a soft landing approach to avoid the hard landing. Otherwise, the economy or the whole country will have serious problem. But now, actually, I updated my understanding of China's development. We need to turn, we need to shift the development direction without landing. Because as long as you landed, when you stopped, it's very difficult to get off again. And the most important thing, if you come back to the second slide, I mentioned about of this thermodynamics. And there's no energy. So now, if you talk about the paradigm shift, so we have to think about there are two approaches. The first is catch up. You do a good job, and then I do better job. If you do a good job, and I'll try to catch up you. So that's the reason, that in China was criticized a lot about its copying industry. Basically, these are all catch-up. And then second is about leapfrog. And now for China, if we need to think about a new kind of economy, especially we put ahead of sustainability. So this is a new economy, and in order to make it happen, we have to change the logic from catch-up to leapfrog. And that leapfrog is not only means approach, but it also means new economy and a new possible society. So there are two categories of leapfrog. The first one is a common task driven by the technology change globally. And for instance, this Internet of Things and all of this Internet-related economy, and Alibaba becomes the second largest Internet business in the world. So which means that anyway, China is not doing a good job. Anyway, China is not bad in that area. But for me, I think more and more important is the uniqueness of China, and which will be the fundamental driving force to achieve a new possible future. So what is the uniqueness of China? And we are lucky because we are so big country. And or we can say that we are so small country with such a big population. So we have so many problems. And, but if you look at in a different way, so we can say that whereas the problems, there is a need of design and new opportunities. So these are China's uniqueness. For instance, we have a huge manufacturing industry and need to transformation, and we have a large-scale ongoing urbanization process, and we have still have half of the population based in countryside. And the environmental challenge is serious. Today I saw people running. I said in Beijing nobody will run because the air is not that clean. And we have lots of challenges, for instance, how to improve the social welfare system, including education and health. And we have a strong government, which you don't have. Most of European countries don't have. And for me, I think that we will look at it as an opportunity rather than a problem. And we have a large population, and it can be looked as an asset of human resources. And also, the uniqueness of Chinese culture. And all of these things are uniqueness of China, and it also means a possible leapfrog economy. But what design can contribute? So there's 2 points in that question. The first is what design? What kind of design? The second, in which way design can contribute. So Ezio is not very happy about this design point 1, design point 2, 2.0, design 3.0, but I want to introduce this design 1.0, which means it's a modern design. I mean, started from early 19th centuries. It's basically to fulfill the needs of industry, especially for the creation and design of products. And design 2.0 is a current stage of affairs. And we already see that the design is extended from material to immaterial design, from product to service, and including reframing the problems and the restructure issues. But still, the result of the design, and it basically is to deliver a proposal. Even, I mean, now we say that it's changed. Before, basically, the proposal is object-based, and now basically is a strategic-based, or anyway, is a kind of mixture of product and services. But here, we're talking about design 3.0, and this is something different with Mr. Lu, because in China, the chairman of academia, the former chairman of academic science, and he is the strong promoter of design 3.0. But what I talk today is a little bit different with him. And the design 3.0 is to facing the major problem of today. For instance, we talk about the transformation of the industry. If we talk about how to solve the problem of urban and rural development. For instance, integrate the urban-rural, promoted urban and rural interaction and exchange. Basically, my book is basically talking about that story. And all of these things, actually, they are involving a complex system of stakeholders and issues, and involving larger number of people and institutions. And it's not only a kind of you provide a proposal and then the story is over. The design have to integrate, not only integrate into that area, and they have to think about how to deliver and implement the whole thing. And that kind of design, we really need a revolution, or we need a kind of a huge transformation. So this is basically my description of design 3.0. And if you look at our design, how to apply design 3.0 for leaping frog. So catch up and the leapfrog, this is a horizontal axis, and then we have a vertical one, it's a passive attitude, and a proactive one. So before, basically design is working on the lower left area, and now we need to think about how to work on the upper left, upper right area, which is a design innovation for leaping frog. So if you talk about design policy, we should first support developing a right kind of design, If we say that we put a design policy in a certain context, then we will say that a right kind of design. The second is to enable it for the right social and economic changes in today's complex mix of networked nature and artifact error. So this is, in China, what is a design policy? If we put it into a Chinese context, this is a Chinese design policy means. So basically, this is now an ongoing research project, and we are talking about to do studies of China's possible design policy. So the interesting thing is that first we need to talk about how to create this capacity of design 3.0. And the second, most important thing, you have to integrate this capacity to the national needs and the emerging economies. So in this way, with a new kind of design, you can have a really strong economic support and vice versa. So if you look at what will be the result of or the evaluation of this design policy, China's design policy roadmap. So according to this time frame, so from the first stage, 2015 to 2020, design policy basically act as a kind of a promoter, which means enable this the awareness and also the capacity of design in the whole society. And the second period, 2020 to 2030, basically is a kind of integration, enables the integration, which means that this kind of design capacity to integrate with emerging strategic industry, strategic economy for China, and also integrated to the social area. And third period, 2030 to 2050, basically is it become an enabler, which means basically is that the design policy or the design policy become invisible. So in a strategic perspective, the advantage of being developing like China, like Africa, is because we have energy behind this developing. And for me, I think that the energy behind this developing scenario is very, very important. And as long as such kind of energy can be gathered, and we should take advantage of this energy to generate the changes. If the current situation is not good, then the changing is not only necessary, but also relevant. So there's two ways of generating energy. Basically, before it's basically top-down in China, and now we talk about the bottom-up. So social innovation, from my perspective, is a kind of a collective energy generation process. And it redefines a kind of scale. Before the scale is individual, it's very big, they call scale, and then there's a kind of a small, but collective scenario, it can be another definition of scale. And it's super powerful, and you can see there's a small but connected economy and a small but connected society. It's super powerful, but it can also be harmful if without a certain very, clear direction. So for me, I think that if I'd like to use this Adam Smith's the invisible hand to talk about what will be the best scenario. I think that the state of art is that we keep this energy and we use this invisible hands, including the market, including the government, and including the individuals. I mean, these different stakeholders, the power, the energy, and it's a kind of mixture of holistic impact, but without be visible. So how to cultivate and guide the qi? Qi means energy. Towards a certain kind of direction. This is a key of design policy making. And so for me, I think that this traditional Chinese pattern of yin and yang and taiji, which is they have black and white being integrated and in dynamic way and keep a kind of a balance, should be an ideal model. Thank you for listening, because we still have time to discuss.
Lou, thank you very much.
As you have understood, Lou and myself, we live in the same planet. So we have a kind of shared view on many things. There's one point in the presentation that make me think. When you said there are 3 phases and you arrive, not you maybe, but the government arrive from now to the 50s. What is that? For me, it's a story. So they tell a story that it could be like this. And afterward, something has to happen. But when they are really serious, they do exactly what I said, so I'm very influential on them. Because you remember when they wanted to move from the communist regime economy to the capitalistic one, what they did? The special economic zone. And the special economic zone is, at a very large scale, the same idea of the experimentation lab. So they experiment because they know, and they are very clever, as my friend Lo, that you can make plan, but to make something happen in 20 years, you have to make some experiment today. And so the risk of this giving this kind of timetable is, as it can happen in Italy, that they say, oh, now we have the crisis, we will talk about this afterwards. Where the reality is, if we want to have an afterward, we have to start to do something now. And so if you want to have the second and third phase that you are mentioning in the state that is mainly countryside and big industry, you have to do what you do. So to start to experiment something today. So it's very important. If the designer wants to have their own role, it's not to wait for the 2020 that we will enter in the second phase, but we have to do something today to prepare the condition that the overall system, hopefully, will shift in the second phase. But the shift of the complex system happens because before you have created the preconditions. So in the same way that they have the special economic zone, they should have, let me invent, the sustainability economical zone. So start to have places in which it's really totally different. And by this point of view, your not so democratic structure could help, because it's easier in China than in another place to make this kind of big scale experimentation that for us are more difficult. So we have to make smaller scale experimentation.
Yeah, and I will just one sentence reaction. I think that for me, I think that now the action towards sustainability, I mean, globally, for me, I think that it's like a war. Yeah, it's a war towards sustainability. So this is sometimes I think that not only this bottom-up initiative is necessary, but also I think that the top-down guiding is important. So I'm very, for those who don't know what I'm doing, I mean, you can download my book, and basically this is what Ezio said. Basically, it's a kind of very entrepreneurship-driven initiatives. But I think that it's very important to do what I can do, but also I need to know what is a common vision.
We have a common vision for our next speaker.
Okay.
We have very grateful to you.
Yeah.
We're very grateful to you for our fantastic presentation. Thank you. Thank you so much.